Hello from the Manhattan Project National Historical Park in Oak Ridge. The X-10 graphite reactor was built in Oak Ridge as the first permanent nuclear reactor. On the morning of November the 4th, 1943, the reactor went critical and started producing plutonium-239. That plutonium was sent to Los Alamos, New Mexico, where it influenced the design of the Fat Man bomb. This logbook reflects the moment criticality was reached. It is on display at the graphite reactor on the campus of Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Come and see us at Manhattan Project National Historical Park.
Hello, we are live. Welcome, everybody. We are here today for In Conversation with Liza Alther and Leah Hampton. I'm Tracy Dunn. I will be the host today and really just facilitating the discussion. So I do have a couple of announcements to start. First of all, just thank you for being here. I hope everyone is enjoying the Southern Festival of Books. We've got so many wonderful authors here. And I would like to just say this is put on by Humanities Tennessee. It's a wonderful organization. And we are, if you are watching through Facebook Live or on YouTube and want to ask any questions throughout the session, you can download the festival app or through the StreamYard streaming app. You can send them through that, and we will make sure that that they get through today as well. Humanities Tennessee, this is all really funded and made free by donations by people like yourself, individuals, as well as through book sales with Parnassus, who's our official bookseller. So any of your purchases via Parnassus really helps keep this festival free, keep us running every year. So please donate. The links for both the books at Parnassus as well as to donate to Humanities Tennessee will be put into the chat feature. So please check that out and help keep this festival free. One final note really is that the festival inclusion policy does apply online as well as when we have the festival in person. So I'm going to introduce the authors here. We have Liza Alther. She was born in 1944 in Kingsport, Tennessee. She has published 12 books, 8 novels, a volume of short stories, 2 memoirs, and 1 narrative history. They have been translated into 18 other languages, and 4 were New York Times bestsellers, including the feminist coming-of-age classic Conflicts. Her most recent novel, which we'll discuss today, is Swan Song and Odyssey. Alther divides her time between her home in East Tennessee and Vermont and New York City. I believe today she is in Vermont with us. And Leah Hampton, she writes about Appalachia, corpses, eco-anxiety, and smart women. That is true. I have, and you can really see that in her collection, her debut collection, Fuckface and Other Stories, which was released by Henry Holt just this year in July 2020. She's a graduate of the, I'm going to say that wrong. Do you want to, Michener Center for Writers, and she has been awarded UT Austin's Keene Prize for Literature and the James Hurst Prize for Fiction and the Doris Betts Prize. She has held fellowships at Hedgebrook, the Adirondack Center for Writing, Wild Acres, and the Vermont Studio Center. And her work has appeared in Ecotone, McSweeney's, Electric Literature, Story South, Lit Hub, and elsewhere. So we are so fortunate to have both of these talented authors here today with us. Their books that we're discussing are Swan Song and Odyssey and Fuckface and Other Stories. So one is a novel and one is a collection of short stories. And they're so specifically relatable. Whether or not you were from the South, I really, really enjoyed reading both books. And I could go on, but instead I'm going to start out by letting each of them introduce their stories. or their books for a few minutes, and then we'll kind of go into questions and discussing kind of how the books relate and really just get to know these authors. So Liza, why don't we start with you?
Okay, thank you, Tracy. I'm really happy to be here today, and I so much appreciate the Southern Festival of Books having invited me and having organized these wonderful 10 days of book talks. And I very much appreciate Tracy's being here to moderate for Leah and me. So my new book is Swan Song, an Odyssey, and it's my 8th published novel, my 12th published book. And it began its life as a murder mystery. In 2015, my partner and I took a tour on the Queen Mary II from Hong Kong to Brooklyn. And we paid a lot of money to have a tour of the ship. And of course, it's a vast ship, so the tour took several hours. And during the course of it, we discovered several places that we thought would be good for hiding a corpse. So I decided that I would write a murder mystery set on a cruise ship. And so in the mornings, I would stay in the cabin and read and write, and my partner would go out and participate in workshops and listen to lectures and swim at the pool and meet people. And then we would meet up at lunch, and she would tell me all the things that she had seen and heard and the people that she had met. And in the course of this, she met one woman who was absolutely horrible. She would take people's clothes out of the dryers in the laundry room before their cycles had finished so that she could use the dryers. And when they got up to swim at the swimming pool, she would steal their lounge chairs. So my partner and I decided that she needed to be killed. So she became the victim of my murder mystery, and I wrote a long chapter. But when I got back home, I read the chapter and I realized that mystery writers have a skill set that I lack and that I don't think I have time to learn. So I just put the chapter away in my drawer and forgot about it. But a couple of years later, I was cleaning and I found the chapter and I read it and I thought, well, it wasn't a good chapter for a murder mystery, but it was a good chapter for the kind of novel that I love to write, which is the quest novel. The writer Lee Smith, whom I'm sure many of you have read, is a good friend of mine, and she says there are only 2 types of stories in all of world literature. In one type, someone takes a trip, and in the other type, a stranger comes to town. So obviously the quest novel falls into the first category of someone taking a trip. And I love to send my protagonist on a journey in which she meets people and has experiences that teach her things that she needs to know about who she is and what she's supposed to be doing with her life. So in the case of Swan Song, my protagonist is named Jessie Drake, and she's a doctor in the emergency room in Burlington, Vermont. Both her parents have recently died, as has her lover of 20 years, a writer named Kat. So she is mired down in grief, and she gets an email from a man with whom she had had an affair when they were both medical residents at the Roosevelt Hospital in New York City. He's named Ben, and he invites her to help him run the clinic on a British cruise ship called the Amphitrite. So she accepts, hoping that it's going to jar her out of her grief. So as the ship sails through the Middle East, through Southeast Asia, and then the Middle East, then through the Suez Canal and across the Mediterranean and through the Straits of Gibraltar, and then across the Atlantic back to Brooklyn, Jessie is struggling with how to come to terms with death. And meanwhile, Ben is attempting to reignite their ancient romance. And there's also a lovely younger woman on the ship named Mona Paradiso, who has been trained as an opera singer in New York. And she's the singer for the entertainment component of the ship. And she is attracted to both Ben and Jesse. So this very complicated emotional triangle develops. And Jesse is trying to struggle with not only how to come to terms with death, but whether or not she can re-engage with life and allow herself to love again, or if she even wants to. And meanwhile, there's a cast of minor characters who are meant to provide some comic relief. They aren't remotely interested in understanding love and life and death. All they want to do is dance and drink and sneak in and out of each other's cabins in the middle of the night. And my major minor character is named Gail Savage, and she is based on the woman that my partner and I discovered on the Queen Mary that we thought needed killing. So she's been demoted from a major character to a minor character, but she's still there. So when the reviews came out, one of them said, this voyage is the most depressing trip since the Titanic. And another one said, this voyage had me rolling on the deck with laughter. So, of course, the reviews that I liked most were the ones that acknowledged both aspects of the book, the comic and the tragic, because what I was trying to do was to balance the two. It's what I try to do in all my novels, because it seems to me that life is made up of about equal amounts of happiness and sadness, and that if you're going to maintain your sanity, you have to face this fact and learn how to balance the two aspects of life. So that's what I was trying to do in the book. And if you should choose to read it, I hope the book amuses you and also moves you. And thank you for choosing to be here tonight and for listening to me. Leah.
Oh my goodness. Well, Liza, I just want to say that if I have to be on the Titanic, please let it be with you and Lee Smith, because I'll go down very happy. That sounds like a great trip, and I'm fully aware of the bittersweet and the combination of light and dark that happens when you are an Appalachian writer. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much to the Southern Festival of Books for having me. This has been a wonderful experience so far. I hope everyone is enjoying all the sessions. And I want to say thank you to Tracy also for being here, and to Parnassus Books. Encourage everybody to buy lots of books from Parnassus Books, because we love our indie booksellers. And I'm just so glad to be here and so appreciative. So my book is called Fuckface, and it's really fun to say. It's also really fun to take to family gatherings, just leave on the coffee table. I highly recommend doing that. I've had some good reports from readers who have enjoyed that process very much. So, but it's not a book with lots of profanity in it. It's a short story collection, and it takes place in Central and Southern Appalachia. It's 12 stories, all about the region, and everywhere from where I live here in Western North Carolina, Eastern Tennessee, Eastern Kentucky, West Virginia. And all these places, although they're very different, have a lot in common in that there are a lot of ecological crises happening in the region. And I've always been really interested in those. I've always been really interested in this as a very feminine landscape, and a place that I wanted to write about, because I saw it as being a really feminine experience. And I couldn't find a book that dealt with modern people in Appalachia who were acting upon the land, and the land was acting upon them. And so I was really interested in that kind of symbiosis. And so I wrote a book of stories about how we live on the land, and how, if you live in Appalachia, that can be a titanic experience, and has a lot of problems that come with it. So it's a dark book that I hope I try to leaven with some humor. And oh, here's the cover. I've got it behind me. Can you all see this? It's got a frog on it. Because each story, most of the stories deal in some way with some kind of corpse, and often it's an animal. There's a lot of animals in the book, because I don't have any neighbors here. I live in the woods, and my neighbors are bears and coyotes, so I write about them too. And what I thought I would do is just read a very quick passage from the second story in the book, because I think it's timely right now. We've had a lot of forest fires out in California, and that's a phenomenon that happened here 4 years ago during the election in 2016. For those people who don't live here or who maybe don't remember, in the fall of 2016, Central Appalachia especially, and Southern Appalachia was on fire. And we were apparently told that it was our fault that Trump got elected in West Virginia and Eastern Kentucky. But everybody I know didn't have a chance to vote because they were so busy fighting forest fires that were happening here in the region. And so I wanted to write about that. So this is just a brief passage about a character named Larry, who is a firefighter in Western North Carolina. And he is having the experience of this background of pundits on the television when he goes home and all this kind of bigger political stuff happening at the same time that he's seeing his home burn in October of 2016. So this is just a couple paragraphs of him making the decision to take the night shift and try to fight some fires in Western North Carolina at night. This is from a story in the book called Boomer. Night work suited him. He could see the enemy and nothing else. He could focus. Larry fought for Hollow Rock every night through November. The teams were just barely staying away of the threats, which were legion, fierce, and scattered. First, they prayed for rain. When rain didn't come, they prayed for smoke, the death of wind, a cold fog to choke oxygen, douse sparks. Instead, the clear fall weather gave the blazes air, feeding every small hell. The forests went cinematic at night, with lit slithers of amber inching in chiaroscuro through the trees and blackness. Millions of orange sitters floated around Larry perpetually in the dark. Fire, I can hear my cat who wants dinner. Sorry if that's interrupting the sound. Fire likes to jump, to send out emissaries. Each night, more ignited dander and duff swirled and arced over the ditches they dug and above the disused logging roads they used as lines of defense. Embers burned bright and small, like sprites carrying the news of fire. Larry watched them with his mouth open. He wheezed inside his mask. His breaths echoed and pulled hotly on his upper lip. Even masked, he could taste the firebrands in the scorched air. They were lighted wicks, uncandled, unbound tendrils eating themselves. They passed delicately in front of him, seeking hosts. When it was quiet, when no one was shouting, Larry could hear the trees recoil. Branches crackled, trunks creaked and flinched from the bite of flame. Most of the embers burned themselves out, dissipating into charred vapor. Some he swatted or stomped. The ones he couldn't reach, the few that caught a wind, continued on in the thick ether above the forest, eventually coming to rest on fresh, dry victims in the distance. So that's a little snippet. Thanks for listening. And I think is Tracy there, or are we going to go back to questions?
Yep, I am. Thank you both. I can confirm. One, yes, Liza's book is very funny. I could just not get over how funny the Gail-Rodney relationship was throughout that novel. And I can also confirm that it is very fun to carry Leah's book around your family.
But you just take the jacket off and put it on all books.
Wonderful. So, oh my gosh, I'm not even sure where to start. But as y'all were speaking, I think that I would like to start with a question that I had about labels and kind of what it means as storytellers and writers, what labels mean to you and how they affect your writing process. After reading both of these books, ones that kind of stuck out to me are lesbian, mother, redneck, freak, old, and Southern, and there were many more. Those were the first three that kind of came to mind, and kind of like how that affects your writing, what labels mean, and how you use them in your stories or try not to use them.
Well, in my case, my mother was from New York and my father was from Southwest Virginia, so I've been labeled everything over the course of my career. I mean, Yankee, Southerner, Appalachian, lesbian, everything. And my feeling is that I'm happy to belong to any group that will have me. But but that it doesn't really affect what I write, that I write what I need to write for my own internal reasons and not from a wish or even an ability to belong to any particular school.
Were you finished? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I do think that particularly for Appalachian writers, there is a lot of labeling of us, and there's a lot of people who like to tell ours in a way that can often be politicized or always generous. So I'm aware of that, and I think as I was working on Raise, I did think about, writing against kind of male gazy, Trumpy stereotypes of the region. But me personally, I'm like Liza in that I'm very much a country girl, but my mother is British, and so I hold dual citizenship. And I had this, because of that, I think I have the ability to have some distance from a lot of the ways people try to freaken me to make me the freak or whatever. So I can kind of step back from that stuff. But I think it makes you a good observer when you're aware of it, but you can step outside of it.
Yeah, I think an awful lot of writers have some kind of duality to them. If you look at the history of the literary movements in the U.S., often like Jewish or the African American, or often people have dual identities. They're Americans, but they're also members of some special interest group. And I think it gives you a real sense of insecurity when you're young. You don't quite know who you are or where you fit in. And one way that people try to resolve those issues are through writing. It certainly was true for me. I think having this split between the North and the South, and having the two cultures be so antagonistic most of the time, really has fueled most of my writing.
Yeah, same. I told somebody recently that I think the first writer I fell in love with was Truman Capote, because he was a weird kid stuck in a small town in the South, and I just appreciated that so much, and I so identified with it. So yeah, and I think that's very much a big part of writers from the South, especially, that we kind of embrace the fact that we don't make sense in some way.
Well, I'm so old that I started writing before there was a specific category of Appalachian writer.
Right.
Used to be Southern writer. It's only fairly recently, I guess the last 20 years, that we've split off in Appalachia and have realized that we're even weirder than
schism.
Yeah.
Yeah, proud to be with you here.
Yeah.
The Southern Lit Reformation that we've designed with Appalachian books.
Great. Yeah, I think you both did a wonderful job just kind of showing. I think we live in a society where labels are just so easy to just put a label on something and have that be an excuse for why something is, but really digging deep into what it means to be from somewhere, to be, in a certain group, and how that is not the entirety of any story. So that's great.
It might have been Clyde Edgerton, that I'm not sure, who said, you can call me anything, just don't call me a terrible writer.
Yeah, and Ron Rash always talks about how the more specific you are, the more universal the piece will be. And so he will do like really, really specific descriptions of very specific locales and things. And the only label that I really reject is the idea that I'm a regional writer, because everybody's a regional writer because everyone's from somewhere. And if you're going to call me a regional writer, then you have to New York is a region. So all those books are regional too, everything else I'll figure out, but just don't call me regional.
Well, one thing I love about your stories is how, we're from what we like to call the Mountain Empire area, North Carolina, Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee. And your stories are set throughout that region. And you can see that if you break Appalachia down, there are actually differences in the different regions of Appalachia. So, you could go forever. It's like splitting the atom. Where do you stop?
Well, and this from your earlier books, you go 5 miles and you've got a different
Different accent.
a different accent and a completely different set of cultural references, and you've got different kin, and I think that maybe that is a feature of a lot of, if there is anything that's regional about writers like us, that's something that, the awareness of microclimate and of microculture.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's one fair label. I don't know. What else you want to know, Tracy?
Well, that leads perfectly into my question about influences from outside the region. So both of you have spent time outside of Appalachia, but know that region well. How does, living in different areas of the world or the country kind of affect your writing, and how does it come out in your books?
You go first, Leah.
Okay. I think, like I said earlier, being so my daddy is a Harlan, Kentucky boy, and my whole father's side of my family is all Harlan County coal miners, and my mother is from London, and all like very working class Cockney London. So I am referred to as Hafe and Hoff because I have this bifurcated experience, right? And so I've lived overseas, but I think probably the way that it has affected me is, like I said before, that I can have that distance and I can kind of step back and look at things, which Lee Smith has talked about too, and which I'm sure Liza can speak to. And the other thing I would say is that it has made me very aware of class issues, because I know that wherever you go in the world, all coal miners are the same, and all class issues are the same, and I see, when we're writing about places like Appalachia, I see those experiences as being very universal. So just kind of confirming, I think, the more you know and the more of the world you see, the more the hyper-specific becomes universally true, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess, I would see myself as very much of a hybrid, in that a lot of the skills that I learned and have used for writing, I just absorbed as a child growing up in Kingsport. The whole anecdotal way that everybody talked to each other. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
talked in terms of analysis or theories. They just told little stories that were supposed to illustrate sometimes very important points. And the same in church, that these parables that are little stories that embody some kind of principle, that wider abstract principle, but never in so many words. And so I just absorbed that, and that, I think, really has been such a help to me. But also, once I left Kingsport to go to college in Boston, then I just kind of cut loose. For a long time, I didn't even go back except at Christmas. And I lived in London and Paris and New York City and Boston, and absorbed a lot from that too. And my big influence, my mentor, was Doris Lessing from England. And so I guess my writing's kind of a hodgepodge.
Okay, so I have a question about, so in both of your books, everything from, as Leah mentioned, wildfires, I think wildfires come up in both of your books, to refugees, both speak a lot to the realities that we're facing in the South, in our country, in our world. I also saw, Leah, that you are running for office. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. Yep. County Commissioner of Haywood County, North Carolina. We'll see. It's really fun to go to a Democratic Party regional headquarters meeting and have to announce yourself and what you do and tell a room full of very, very ancient yellow dog Democrats what the title of your book is and still get their endorsement. That's a fun adventure. Primaries were a trip. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know if I'll win, but we're a purple county, so maybe that'll happen. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's wonderful. I'm excited to see how it plays out, but
yeah.
I'm excited that you are running. And so I just want to discuss a little bit about politics and what role it plays in your writing. I know that the time between, when you're writing and when the book is actually published can be a long time, but it just felt so relevant right now, even reading it in September 2020. So tell me a little bit about how that plays into your storytelling.
That's for me?
Both of you.
Both of us?
Yeah.
Okay. A lot. Yeah, I'm just a really political person, and I think about it a lot. So yeah, I'm curious about what Liza has to say to this. Well, I just got sick of it and ran for office while my book came out. That was what I did.
Well, one thing I loved about your stories was the way that you did that. You touch on a lot of the issues that are of deep concern in Appalachia right now about the strip mining and the fouling of the water and the toxic air and the number of cases of cancer from both of those. But you do it in such a way, you do it through concrete characters, and it's very powerful, I think. And I really admired how you did that. And as I was listening just now, I realized probably part of the reason that I admired it so much was that it was what I was trying to do myself in Swan Song.
I was going to say yours is. I think you have probably a lot to say on this because it's so political what you're doing. So,
well, again, I think that the real challenge is not to hit people over the head with it, but to incorporate it if you can in a story and in characters and have it emerge. Because otherwise, you're not writing fiction; you're writing polemic. But I thought you really found the voice for it, to be able to say what you think, but through your characters.
We lost you there for a second, Liza. Well, I think we got the point of what you said. Sorry, go ahead, Tracy.
Yeah, I think you both did a really great job of that, and I was just curious, and it's interesting to hear how active or what it means to be, bashing someone over the head versus telling that story. I think that's a really fine line to walk. And
well, Liza, you mentioned the storytelling thing too. Is it your experience that storytelling in that oral tradition, do you see that as political too? In that, the way that we, you talked about parable in church and the way that we all are porch sitters who convey meaning through story together. That's sort of the Appalachian experience. And I'm just curious if you have ever seen that as being, political in any way, the way that people, I don't know, try to create empathy through those stories, or does it make any sense? I'm trying to ask you.
I mean, I guess it's political in the sense that it illustrates another way of being, in contrast to a very analytical style, which is what I got introduced to when I went to college in the North. It's a softer style. But it's a difference, and it's not inferior. It's just an alternative way of approaching reality. So in that sense, it's political just by doing it, saying, look, here is who we are and what we're like. And it's not the same as the ethos of America. It's at odds with it in some ways.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's nice to hear Liza Alther say something like that.
So we have a question from the audience. It is for Leah. One of the things that I'll just read it as she wrote it. One of the things I really appreciated about these stories is how many stories seem to be lurking behind the stories. How much world building went into these stories, or did these just emerge with them?
I do a lot of research. I think about that a lot. I talk to a lot of people, but I don't. If I'm talking to a person, I don't usually tell them that I'm researching the story. I just ask them about what they do. But yeah, I think a lot. I think you have to, especially if you're going to write about this region, you have to do a lot of research, which I would imagine is true also for Liza, that you're very careful and study up a lot before you start something.
Yes, I do. I think I do it partly to keep the rational part of my brain busy while the other part of my brain writes the story. It's like throwing a bone to a dog or something. But I do a lot, and mainly to give myself the confidence to invent. I don't use a lot of the research I do, but it's there, and it gives me the confidence to. One thing I loved was talking about your research, Leah. You do so many different kinds of characters. If you go to creative writing classes or creative writing school, they always tell you to write about what you know. So the result is you get all these novels and stories that are about writers. And since writers don't do anything but sit in a room and write, that can be pretty boring. But you're really out there with park rangers and people who work at Walmart, and I mean it was great, the variety of your characters and the breadth of their experiences and jobs.
Thank you so much. Well, I mean, you're putting us on a boat, and I feel like there's a lot going on with you too. I think. Do you know Mary Lee Settle?
Yeah.
Do you know that Mary Lee Settle line from the Paris Review interview where they asked her, how come you're not, you're such a great writer, how come you're not more well known? And she said, because I don't write about being vaguely uncomfortable in Connecticut, which I think is all most writers know about.
That's great. That's a
so
great
yeah, isn't that good? I want that tattooed on my arm. Y'all, my cat really wants to be part of this session, so I might have to hold her for the next couple of minutes. She's climbing on my desk. Ask Liza a question while I try to appease her.
Okay. Well, what are you both working on right now?
What
is Liza working on right now?
I'm not working at the moment. I've been kind of unnerved by the whole, like everybody else, by the virus situation. And I have a feeling I'm stuck in sort of permanent fight or flight mode. I'm just kind of waiting to see what's going to come next. And for me to go off into an imaginary world, I really have to feel relatively secure in this world. And I don't right now. So, but every time I finish a book, I always think that I've said everything I have to say, and there's nothing more to say, so I might as well retire. And but usually if I wait long enough, the well starts filling up again. So I'll just wait and see what happens.
Liza, do you think you'd do more nonfiction?
Possibly, yeah. I like doing nonfiction. I've done a narrative history of the Hatfield McCoy feud and a couple of memoirs, and that was fun. So that might be a good way to grease the wheels.
Right. Yeah.
What about you? You probably don't have any time to write if you're having to do so much because the book just came out, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't campaign because of COVID, so I'm not kissing babies right now.
When's the election? November 3rd?
November 3rd, yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I get to go vote for myself in a few days. I mean, I'm working on more stories, and I'm trying to write a novel, but I might, when this session is over, I might ask you for some wisdom, because novels are different. Short stories are a different. I think of them as being a completely different kind of writing than novel writing, and I have a draft of a novel, but it's just not the same. And I'm always amazed by writers who can sustain narrative that long. And anyway, I'm just here for advice from
I'm
the
always
Appalachian
amazed
Duchess.
by short story writers who are able to, shut up and just do that single crystalline moment, and then stop. Because for me, if each of my novels has started as a short story, and then I have to know, well, who are they related to, and what was their early life like, and it's I just so I really, really admire short stories, and I've written a few, but it's not my gift.
Well, I always tell people it's just because I have commitment issues. That's all it is. So if you want to get married, you buy Liza's book, and if you want to have a fling, you buy Fuck Me.
It's funny. We did have a question a little bit back about for you, Leah. is if you were there when the fires went through. Someone had hiked through back in 2018 and saw some of the devastation.
Yeah, I was here on and off because I was actually in Texas for most of it, and but I came home for a few weeks and then had to leave again, and so that was part of why I wrote about it, was because I felt really disconnected from people my neighbors, whose houses were threatened, and I wasn't there because I was doing my fellowship at Michener. But yeah, I just there's so much environmental stuff that I don't know how anybody, like talking about writers, anybody who's out west right now, how are they getting anything done? Because there's the Parish Review just this week had a piece from C. Pam Zhang. I don't know if y'all know her book, How Much of These Hills is Gold, but she wrote a really beautiful essay that might help you, Liza, about like trying to be an artist at the same time that the world is literally on fire. Yeah. So I missed most of it, but I got to see enough of it that it freaked me out.
Yeah. I hadn't really either hadn't read or dwelled on the term eco-anxiety that you put in your bio and say that you really write about, but it's definitely a real thing. And the way you wrote about it was really, really heartfelt, and it felt like it really brought something important to the surface. So it's, yeah. Wow, we've only got a few minutes left. I have a million more questions in here that I could ask you, but if there's anything that you both wanted to say to wrap up about your novels and to the audience, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I can't think of anything. I think I said what I had to say about it.
Wonderful.
Just that I'm really honored to be here with Liza and to just share time with a writer that I admire so much.
Thank you.
And my cat is currently eating one of my galleys. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but there is a very large ginger cat about 2 feet off screen who is chewing up one of my books. So I think I need to feed her.
Oh, okay. Well,
This is not planned. I'm so sorry.
We would like to see the cat, but if we can't see the cat,
well, I don't. She's fat. I don't know if I can grab her without here. Y'all talk. Ask Liza one last question, and then I'll show. Georgia Peaches will wave us goodbye. That's what we'll do. How about that?
Okay, that sounds great. What question can be answered in just a couple of minutes?
And now she ran away. Okay, never mind.
Okay. Well, I know any of these questions are going to have us run way over. So I think I'm going to use these last couple of minutes to really just thank everyone for coming. Really read Swan Song, read Fuckface and Other Stories. They are amazing pieces of writing and will really get you thinking. I would also like to just remind everyone that the links to purchase and donate are in the chat. So check that out. Thank you. Check out more sessions at the Southern Festival of Books, and this will also be available online to watch later. So feel free to share after the fact. So thank you for attending live, and enjoy the rest of the festival.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thanks, Liza.